"Mama," the little boy whispered, his voice barely audible over the rushing water. "This is the nicest thing you've ever done for me, spending time with me, just you and me." Serafina's voice cracked, not with guilt, but with cold resolve. Marcus had said, "You have to choose, and I'm choosing him." Then, without warning, Serafina pushed the wheelchair forward off the rocky ledge into the churning depths below. "Goodbye, my burden." "No, Mama, Mama, choose me." His scream pierced the mountain air, but only the eagles heard. And just like that, the one who needed love the most was abandoned by the one who bore him. This isn't just a story. It's a painful truth wrapped in ancient wisdom, a tale of cruelty, abandonment, and the mysterious ways of justice. Watch till the end, because what happens next will leave you thinking deep. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you never miss a story like this, and make sure to tell me in the comments where in the world and what time is it you are watching from. I will love to know how far and near my besties are and how far these stories travel. Now, let's dive in. The morning had started like any other in the stone cottage perched on Raven's Peak. 8-year-old Kieran stirred in his narrow bed, his withered legs tucked beneath a patchwork quilt his grandmother had sewn. Though his body was frail, his eyes sparkled with the kind of wonder that poverty couldn't steal. He reached for his makeshift wheelchair, wooden planks and rusted wheels that Thomas the blacksmith had cobbled together from scraps. From the kitchen came the sharp clatter of pots and the click of expensive heels on wooden floors. Serafina swept in, her silk dress pristine despite their humble surroundings, her raving hair pinned perfectly. She looked like nobility preparing for court, but her emerald eyes were ice cold. "Good morning, Mama," Kieran said softly, hope threading through his voice. Serafina barely glanced at him. "I told you not to wheel near the fireplace yesterday. You embarrassed me in front of Lord Marcus." Kieran's face fell. "I only wanted to show him the wooden bird I carved. You don't show wealthy men your deformities. They already whisper I'm cursed. Do you think a lord will marry a woman dragging around a crippled burden?" The words struck Kieran like winter wind. He said nothing. He never did when Mama was angry. Serafina paced the room, adjusting her ruby earrings, then turned suddenly. "Get dressed. We're going somewhere special." Kieran blinked in surprise. "Somewhere?" "A picnic by Silverbrook Falls." Serafina forced a smile too wide to be real. "Just us two." Joy lit up Kieran's face like sunrise. "Really? A picnic?" Serafina nodded. "You love the water sounds, don't you?" Kieran clapped his thin hands together. "Yes, Mama, thank you." Outside, neighbors watched Serafina lift her son into the old cart with unusual gentleness. They saw the wicker basket, the woolen blanket, the carved cup cocked carefully inside. "She's finally showing motherly love," old Bridget whispered. "Perhaps her heart has softened," another villager murmured. But inside the cart, her knuckles were white on the reins, her lips pressed thin, her mind loud with a decision carved in stone. "After today, I'll be free to live," she whispered to the mountain wind as the cart creaked down the winding path towards the falls. Kieran's laughter danced on the breeze, pure and trusting, unaware that death waited by the water's edge. The forest seemed to lean in closer with each turn, as if nature itself sensed the darkness approaching. Ravens circled overhead, their cries sharp as broken glass. Even the horses seemed nervous, their ears twitching at sounds only they could hear. Serafina brought the cart to a halt where the ancient pines towered like silent witnesses. Silverbrook Falls crashed down from the cliff face, its water swollen by autumn rains. The sound was deafening, perfect for drowning out screams. She looked around carefully. No hunters, no travelers, no one to witness. Good. "Ready, my little bird?" she asked, her voice honey sweet and strange. Kieran nodded eagerly. "Yes, Mama, I brought my carving knife. Can I whittle while we eat?" Serafina hesitated, something flickering across her face, then forced another smile. "Of course, darling." She lifted Kieran into his wheelchair and pushed him along the moss-covered stones towards the water's edge. Each bump jarred his frail frame, but he didn't mind. He was simply happy to be outside, to be with his mother.
"Mama," he said softly as they reached the thundering falls. "This is the most beautiful place you've ever brought me." Serafina's hands trembled on the wheelchair handles. She stared at the churning pool below. Deeper than a man was tall. The current moved swift and merciless, carrying broken branches downstream like tiny ships sailing to nowhere. "Mama," Kieran's voice came again, uncertain now. "Why are you crying?" "I'm not," Serafina snapped too quickly. Kieran slowly turned in his chair. "Are we going to wade in the shallows today?" His voice remained hopeful, still trusting. Serafina knelt beside him, tears streaming down her painted cheeks. "I'm sorry, Kieran. I cannot chain my destiny to your burden anymore. I've tried to love you, truly I have, but you're not the child I prayed for. And Marcus, Lord Marcus says I must choose." Kieran blinked, confusion clouding his innocent eyes. "Choose what, Mama?" Serafina stood, her hands gripping the wheelchair handles like iron clamps. Her whole body shook as she whispered, "Goodbye, little burden." "What?" Kieran started to turn, and then Serafina pushed, not in fury, but with calculated determination. The front wheels tipped over the rocky ledge. Water lapped at Kieran's feet, then his waist. "Mama, Mama, stop!" he screamed. Serafina's heart hammered against her ribs. Her feet wanted to run, but her hands kept pushing until gravity took hold. The chair toppled over. Kieran fell into the icy depths. A tremendous splash. Thrashing arms. "Mama!" Then bubbles. Then silence. Serafina turned and fled, not once looking back. By the time she reached the cart, her silk dress was soaked and torn. Her hands shook as she gripped the reins. One tear slid down her cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. "He was never meant for this world," she whispered to herself. She looked at her reflection in the cart's polished brass, fixed her hair with trembling fingers, then drove back toward the village, back to Lord Marcus, back to her lies, back to the life she thought she deserved. But the mountain remembered everything. The ravens saw, and the ancient waters of Silver Brook had their own plans for justice. The world beneath the falls was chaos, dark, freezing and roaring with the voice of 1,000 storms. Kieran plunged deep, his thin arms flailing, his woofless legs like ankles dragging him down. His mouth opened to scream, but only silver bubbles escaped. Terror pounded in his chest as his mother's final words echoed, "Goodbye, little burden." Kieran fought toward the surface, coughing as his head broke through. The current seized him immediately, spinning him like a leaf in a hurricane. His woolen clothes clung to his skin, heavy as chains. The wheelchair had vanished into the depth, but he was alive. Barely. Just ahead, something massive and dark jutted from the churning water. An ancient willow root thick as a man's waist, now than weathered by countless storms. He kicked with what little strength his withered legs possessed and threw both arms around the root. The bark tore his palms raw, but he held on like his life depended on it, because it did. Gasping, sobbing, he screamed into the roaring falls, "Help! Please, someone help me!" But only the forest spirit heard his plea. For what felt like hours, Kieran clung to that root, his small body racked with shivers, teeth chattering like winter bones. "Think," he whispered to himself through blue lips. "Remember the story his grandfather told about swimming. Float on your back, use your arms, let the water carry you gently." But every time he tried to release the root, his body sank like a stone. His legs wouldn't kick properly. His arms grew weaker with each passing moment. He gripped the ancient wood again, tears mixing with river water. He closed his eyes and remembered his grandfather's voice. "The mountain spirits help those who refuse to surrender, little one, even when all seems lost." And so Kieran tried again. Slowly, carefully, he released one arm and began to paddle. His breathing was quick and shallow, his movements clumsy, but there was something, a rhythm, a dance with the water rather than a fight against it. For seconds that felt like miracles, Kieran floated. His legs dangled useless, but his hands sliced through the surface with growing confidence. Then a sudden undercurrent grabbed him, dragging him back under. He swallowed mouthfuls of bitter water, choking violently as he fought his way back to his lifeline, the blessed root that had become his anchor to the world above. The sun climbed higher through the pine branches. Mountain birds sang their ancient songs. The falls continued their eternal dance, silver and beautiful and deadly. And Kieran, tiny and broken and half drowned, clung to that root as if it were the last solid thing in creation. His voice had grown hoarse from calling. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion. His fingers were beginning to slip when a shadow fell across the water. Heavy boots splashed into the shallows. A voice, deep and frantic, called out, "Hold on, child, I'm coming." Through blurred vision, Kieran saw an old man wading into the current, strong arms outstretched, water rushing around his knees. The stranger grabbed Kieran just as his grip finally failed. "I've got you, little warrior. I've got you safe now." Kieran collapsed against the man's broad chest, coughing up river water, shaking like an autumn leaf. Then darkness claimed him. Aldrich Stormheart, the mountain hermit and former soldier, carried Kieran gently to shore. He wrapped him in his own woolen cloak and stared at the wooden wheelchair priest floating downstream. His weathered face darkened with understanding. "What kind of monster," he whispered to the wind, "throws away something this precious?" The mountain seemed to whisper back, "One who will learn the price of such cruelty." Aldrich's cabin was small but warm, filled with the scent of pine smoke and healing herbs. Hand-carved wolves and eagles watched from wooden shelves. A fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting dancing shadows on log walls. Kieran slowly opened his eyes to soft candlelight and the gentle sound of rain on the roof. The blankets around him were thick and warm. His torn clothes had been replaced with clean, dry wool. His raw hands were wrapped in strips of soft linen. Across the room, beside the glowing fireplace, sat the man who had saved him.
This was Aldrich Stormheart, a quiet silver-bearded hermit in his 60s who had long ago given up hope of having family. "You are awake," Aldrich said gently, rising to his feet. Kieran flinched, his voice barely a whisper. Where is Mama?" Aldrich's expression grew sad. "I don't know who your mother is, child. I found you drowning, fighting like a young wolf to stay alive." Kieran's lip trembled. A single tear rolled down his cheek as the terrible memory crashed back over him. Aldrich walked to the bed and knelt beside it, holding up a wooden spoon filled with warm broth. "Try to eat something, brave one. You need strength." Kieran obeyed, though his hands shook with each sip. "Do you remember your name?" Aldrich asked softly. The boy stared at the spoon for a long moment, then slowly shook his head. He did remember, but something deep inside told him that name belonged to a child who had been left to die. That boy was gone forever. Aldrich noticed the hesitation and nodded with understanding. "That's all right. You don't have to speak of the past until you're ready." He studied the boy's face, then smiled gently. "I think I'll call you Phoenix, because the way you held on to that root in those deadly waters, that wasn't just survival. That was a soul refusing to be extinguished." Kieran looked up at him then, his eyes still wet but somehow brighter. Phoenix. Not a name given by blood, but chosen by a stranger who saw worth where others saw burden. Weeks passed like pages in an ancient tome. Aldrich built a new wheelchair from the finest oak in his workshop. He carved walking sticks when Kieran showed signs of wanting to try standing. He cooked, cleaned, told stories of mountain legends, and sang old soldiers' songs by the fire. Kieran spoke little at first, sometimes not at all, but he absorbed everything like a sponge, soaking up wisdom. He would watch how Aldrich's gentle hands shaped wood into useful things. He noticed how the old hermit never complained about his own aches and pains, how he shared his meager food without question, how he smiled each morning as if seeing Kieran alive was a gift he never expected to receive. Sometimes Kieran woke from nightmares, cold water,
his mother's final push, the taste of betrayal. And Aldrich would be there humming old mountain ballads, holding his hand until sleep returned. One crisp autumn morning, Aldrich found Kieran sitting by the window, sketching with charcoal on birch bark. It was a picture of gnarled roots reaching up from dark water, and tiny hands clinging to them with desperate strength. Below the image, in shaky letters, Kieran had written, "She let me go, but I held on." Aldrich read the words and pulled the boy close. "You did more than hold on. You chose to live," he whispered. Days turned to months. Kieran learned to carve wood like his adopted father. His hands grew skillful and sure. He created birds that seemed ready to fly, wolves that looked ready to howl, and trees that seemed to sway in invisible wind. But more than that, he learned something powerful. He had value. Not because he could walk or run like other children, but because his spirit burned bright and true. The boy once known as Kieran was truly gone. In his place sat Phoenix Stormheart, not defined by what he lacked, but celebrated for what he possessed. Years flowed like the river that had nearly claimed him. Phoenix grew into a young man of 20, his arms strong from carving, his mind sharp from Aldrich's teachings, and his spirit unbreakable from surviving the unthinkable. He had learned to walk with crutches, his steps slow but steady as mountain stone. More importantly, he had found his voice, not just in words, but in the beautiful things his hands could create. Phoenix's wooden sculptures had become legendary throughout the mountain villages. People traveled from distant towns to commission his work or simply to witness the magic in his fingers. His masterpiece stood in the center of Aldrich's workshop, a life-size carving of a child rising from churning waters, arms outstretched not in desperation, but in triumph. He called it the Phoenix Rises. One autumn day, a messenger arrived at their cabin bearing an official letter sealed with wax. It was an invitation to the harvest festival in the valley below, a celebration where the finest artisans displayed their work for nobles and merchants. The letter specifically requested Phoenix's presence. "They want to see the legendary mountain carver," Aldrich said, pride glimmering in his eyes. Phoenix stared at the parchment, his heart racing. "Father," he said, for that's what Aldrich had become, "I think it's time." "Time for what, son?" "Time to show the world that broken things can become beautiful." Aldrich smiled and clasped Phoenix's shoulder. "Then we go to the festival. Let them see what you've become."
The harvest festival blazed with colored banners and the music of fiddles. Merchants hawked their wares. Children ran between the stalls with sticky fingers and bright laughter, and nobles in fine clothes sampled wine and admired the craftwork displayed on wooden tables. Phoenix sat behind his collection of carvings, his work drawing crowds of amazed onlookers. "How does he make the wood look so alive?" whispered a woman in silk. "It's like magic," breathed the merchant, studying a carved eagle that seemed ready to take flight. But it was Phoenix's centerpiece that stopped people in their tracks. The Phoenix Rises, the sculpture of a child emerging victorious from deadly waters. As the evening grew later, a commotion arose near the festival's main platform. A woman was arguing with the guards, demanding entry to the noble section. Her voice was shrill, desperate, familiar. Phoenix looked up and felt his blood turn to ice water. Even weathered by years of hardship, even dressed in clothes that had seen better days, he recognized her instantly.
Serafina. She looked older, harder, her once beautiful face marked by lines of bitterness and regret. Beside her stood a man Phoenix didn't recognize, Lord Marcus, though Phoenix had no way of knowing this was the same Marcus who had demanded she choose. They had clearly fallen on difficult times. Their clothes, while clean, were patched and faded. They moved with the desperate hunger of people who had lost everything and were grasping for any chance to climb back up. Serafina's eyes scanned the festival, then locked onto Phoenix's display. She moved closer, drawn by the crowd around his table. When she saw the Phoenix rises, her face went white as fresh snow. Her hand flew to her throat. "It can't be," she whispered. Phoenix watched as recognition dawned in his mother's eyes. 20 years had passed, but a mother never forgets the child she bore, even the child she tried to destroy. He stood slowly, leaning on his crutches, and faced her across the wooden table laden with his art. "Hello, Mother," Phoenix said quietly, his voice carrying clearly over the festival noise. The crowd around them began to quiet, sensing drama unfolding. Serafina stumbled backward, her hand clutching Marcus's arm. "Kieran, no, you died. I saw you fall into the water." "You pushed me into the water," Phoenix corrected, his tone calm but firm. "You chose him over your own child, but the mountain spirits had other plans." The crowd was now completely silent, leaning in to hear every word. A circle had formed around them, nobles and commanders alike transfixed by the confrontation. Phoenix gestured to his sculpture. "This is my story. The child you threw away like broken pottery, but I didn't break, Mother. I became something stronger." Tears streamed down Serafina's cheeks. I thought if I could just have a normal life." "You had a life. You had a son who loved you despite everything, but you threw it away." The festival crowd murmured with anger and disgust. Someone shouted, "She tried to murder her own child." Others began to back away from Serafina and Marcus as if their shame was contagious, but Phoenix raised his hand for silence. "I forgive you, Mother," he said, and meant it, "not because you deserve it, but because forgiveness freed me from the poison of hatred. I became Phoenix because I chose to rise from the ashes of your betrayal. That choice was mine, and it gave me the most precious gift, a father who saw worth where you saw only burden." He gestured to Aldrich, who stood proudly beside him. "This is my real family now, not blood, but choice, not accident, but love." The crowd erupted in applause. People wept openly at Phoenix's grace and strength. Noble ladies dabbed their eyes with lace handkerchiefs. Strong men cleared their throats roughly. But as the applause died down, Phoenix wasn't finished. He pulled out his final carving, one he had never shown publicly before. It was a sculpture of two figures walking away from a small child in a wheelchair, their backs turned, their faces hidden. He placed it on the table beside the Phoenix Rises. "This is called The Choice," Phoenix announced. "Let it stand as a reminder that what we do to the helpless, the forgotten, the different, it echoes through time. My mother chose ambition over love, but the mountain chose mercy over justice, and I choose forgiveness over revenge." Serafina wept harder, understanding that her son had become everything she was not: noble, kind, strong, worthy of respect. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, realizing that his investment in removing the crippled child had cost him everything and gained him nothing.
Phoenix looked around the silent crowd one final time. "I was thrown away because I was different. But being different became my gift. My scars became my art. My pain became my purpose.
Let no one here ever forget, we are all more than our broken pieces. The festival erupted in thunderous applause that seemed to shake the very mountains. Phoenix had not merely survived, he had transformed tragedy into triumph, abandonment into art, betrayal into beauty. And in that moment, surrounded by people who saw his true worth, Phoenix Stormheart, the boy who had been left to drown, finally came fully home. Serafina and Marcus disappeared from the festival that night, their shame too great to bear. Phoenix never saw them again and found he didn't need to. He had long ago built a life worth living with the father who had chosen him. Phoenix's story spread throughout the land, inspiring countless others who felt broken or forgotten. His sculptures toured the great cities, and he became known as the master of second chances. Aldrich lived to see his adopted son honored by kings and queens, never losing the wonder in his eyes at what love and dedication could accomplish. And sometimes, on quiet evenings by the fire, Phoenix would carve small wooden birds and set them on the windowsill, not because they could fly, but because they reminded him that even things with broken wings could be beautiful. The mountain spirits, it seemed, had been listening all along. Here, besties, and so we see how the current of justice flows in mysterious ways. From the depths of abandonment to the heights of triumph, Phoenix showed us that our worst moments don't define us. Our choices after those moments do. When the world tells you you're broken, remember Phoenix clinging to that ancient root. When others see your differences as flaws, remember how his scars became his art. The lesson is clear. We are not victims of other people's cruelty. We are authors of our own redemption. Sometimes the family that saves us isn't the one we're born into, but the one that chooses to love us as we are. What did you think of Phoenix's journey? Drop your thoughts below. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and remember, you too have the power to rise from whatever waters try to drown you. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, support this channel by subscribing, it's free, comment and share to others. Love you always, besties. Until next time.